keep getting really good questions from you folks, like this one from @BigSkyPlanet. Thanks, Doug. Can the Tone Master Pro do stereo double tracking like the TC Electronic MIMIQ doubler? Does the Tone Master Pro have that effect? And if not, can we get Fender to put one in? Well, the Tone Master Pro currently does not have a version of the MIMIQ, but I do hope that Fender gets one, because it's a really cool pedal. I had to pick one up for myself to see if it works as advertised, and indeed, it does. In case you don't know about the MIMIQ, it's a stereo double tracking pedal from TC Electronic. Okay, but what does double tracking mean? Basically, it's from back in the day where you would record a vocal or another instrument part twice. Here's some more info from Wikipedia. As early as the 1950s, it was discovered that double tracking the lead vocal in a song gave it a richer, more appealing sound, especially for singers with weak or light voices. Use of this technique became possible with the advent of magnetic tape for use in sound recording. Originally, a pair of single-track tape recorders were used to produce the effect. Later, multi-track tape machines were used. Early pioneers of this technique were Les Paul and Buddy Holly. Before the development of automatic double tracking, or ADT, it was necessary to record and mix multiple takes of the vocal track. Because it is nearly impossible for a performer to sing or play the same part in exactly the same way twice, a recording and blending of two different performances of the same part will create a fuller, chorused effect with double tracking. But if one simply plays back two copies of the same performance in perfect sync, the two sound images become one and no double tracking effect is produced. ADT was invented specially for the Beatles during the spring of 1966 by Ken Townsend, a recording engineer employed at EMI's Abbey Road studios, mainly at the request of John Lennon, who despised the tedium of double tracking during sessions and regularly expressed a desire for a technical alternative. Townsend came up with a system using tape delay. Townsend's system added a second tape recorder to the regular setup. When mixing a song, its vocal track was routed from the recording head of the multi-track tape, located before the playback head, and fed to the record head of the second tape recorder. An oscillator was used to vary the speed of the second machine, providing variation in delay and pitch depending on the change in the second machine's speed. This signal was then routed from the playback head of the second machine to a separate channel on the mixer. This allowed the vocal delayed by a few milliseconds to be combined with the normal vocal, creating the double-tracked effect. When used on a stereo mix, ADT could be used to create the impression of two different vocal parts on either side of the stereo picture. This technique was used on the stereo mixes of I'm Only Sleeping, Love You Too, And Your Bird Can Sing, and Dr. Robert. This technique could also be applied to instrumental parts as well. On Love You Too, the same use of ADT was applied to the acoustic guitar track, giving the impressions of multiple guitars panned left and right. Okay, so what does this pedal do? Well, the MIMIQ is a combination of delay, dynamics, and pitch applied to the right channel only. The left channel is left unprocessed. The settings for each of those functions is randomly variable, so it kind of sounds like someone else is playing the same riff that you're playing. It has a tightness knob that goes from tight to loose. I like to put it at around 3 o'clock, which is more on the edge of loose. Now, right off the top of my head, I can think of two uses for this pedal right away. When you're recording guitar tracks, this will thicken up your sound without having to record each part twice. It saves you a lot of time that way. You would pan one signal to the left and pan the other signal to the right. Billy Gibbons had to do this manually on the early ZZ Top albums. And for live gigs, this could really fill out your stage sound if you're the only guitarist on stage. Now, you'd have to have a stereo system to make this work. If you play on small stages, that means you'd have to have like either 2 amps or 2 FRs, one on either side of the stage. If you play bigger halls, you can have it go through your front of house system, and you'll get a massive sound that way. Now, this is one of those pedals that can be addicting. It's a subtle effect, but take it away and you notice it. So like I said, the Tone Master Pro does not have a version of this pedal yet. But can we come up with a reasonable facsimile? Well, let's open up Pro Control and see what we can do. I put together a preset that uses FX loops 3 and 4 so I can connect the MIMIQ pedal. I'm using the instrument parallel 1 signal path, which lets me pan my output left and right. The top path is panned to the left, and the bottom path is panned to the right. Now let me show you that. See the input splitter? Pan A, which is the top path, all the way to the left. Pan B, which is the bottom path, all the way to the right. And then the same thing on the output splitter. Pan A all the way to the left, pan B all the way to the right. I'm starting off with the royal tone for some extra dirt, although I do have a foot switch to turn it off and on. I'm using the original MIMIQ pedal, which has stereo inputs and outputs. I decided to test the stereo inputs by putting the Orbit Panner pedal right in front of the MIMIQ. I'm using the Deluxe Reverb Blonde amp for the top path and using the UK30 on the bottom path. So what I'm going to do right now is record some staccato riffs onto a track in my DAW, which is Logic Pro. Then I can expand the visuals for the file so that I can see the difference between the left and right signal. The guitar I'm using is my Fender FMT Telecaster. I use the bridge pickup, which is a Seymour Duncan Pearly Gates. Before I record some staccato riffs, let me show you what this preset sounds like. Now this is with the MIMIQ pedal off. And here's with the MIMIQ pedal on. Now, like I said, I added the Orbit Panner pedal just to test to see if the MIMIQ pedal truly does have stereo ins and outs. So I turned the Orbit Panner on, and this is what it sounds like. So it does have stereo ins and outs. Here's what it sounds like with the Royal Tone pedal on. Okay, now I'll record some staccato notes so I can see which side actually has the processing going on. Okay, when we expand the track, we can see that the delay is down here on the right side. Here's the signal for the left. And see that little gap right there? That's the delay. So the processing is happening on the right side of the MIMIQ pedal. Now I can make a duplicate version of my MIMIQ preset and delete the FX Loops 3 and 4 block and the Orbit Panner. Then I have to decide what effects to use to try to mimic the MIMIQ. After a little trial and error, this is what I decided to use. The Digital Delay Mono. Time is set to 35 milliseconds, feedback is at 0%, mix is at 100%, tone is at 100%. Pedal detune. Switch is set to shallow, position is at 12%. Tube bias tremolo. Speed is at 2.05 Hz, intensity is at 18%, and the level is at 50%. Let's compare the two presets by themselves and see how close I got. Okay, here's how the MIMIQ pedal sounds. Here's how my preset sounds. MIMIQ pedal. My preset. Okay, now I'll use both presets in a song. See if you can tell where I switch between them. And now we'll play that demo song again, but I'll show you which part is using which preset. Okay, it's not a 100% exact copy of the MIMIQ pedal, but it is pretty darn close, and it's definitely usable. The thing that the MIMIQ pedal has going for it is that the functions I mentioned before all have a randomness to them that makes it sound, like it has more of a human feel to it. My Tone Master Pro preset uses pedals with static values. You can't change them ever so slightly. The Tone Master Pro doesn't have modifiers like the fractal modelers do. Thing about it is, when you start using modifiers, it's like you're going away from using an amp and pedals, and it's more like you're working on a spreadsheet. It's no fun, at least not from my point of view anyway. So I've posted this preset to the cloud. It's called DB MIMIQ, M-I-M-I-C. Give it a try, especially if you have the MIMIQ pedal. Let me know if you think it's close or if I missed the mark. And also, let me know if you came up with any improvements to get it closer. And if you're still here, thank you so much for stopping by and sticking around. I really do appreciate it. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, drop me a line here and I'll get back to you as soon as I possibly can. Now, next Wednesday, we will be having all new Tone Master Pro content. You don't want to miss that. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button and ring that notification bell. All right, guys, have a fantastic week, and I'll be talking with you again next Wednesday.